Hello, hello. Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight on this GoBlueMed live stream chat. Unfortunately, I can't really see all of you guys, but we'll just assume that you guys can see us. And I'm Xing Hao. I'm an M2 in the MSTP, and some of my research interests are in immunotherapy and just general metabolism of the immune system. I'm joined by four other med students today, and you'll hear their intros very briefly. And we'll just start off by saying thank you for everyone who submitted questions in advance. We had nearly 70, so the vast majority of these today we won't really be able to get into, but these are definitely questions that you'll be able to revisit in the future. So why don't we start off with Kelsey?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Kelsey Herbert. I'm a fourth-year medical student here at University of Michigan, and I'm going into pediatrics. I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia, and then went to college at the College of Charleston in South Carolina, and then am now here for medical school.
Great. And how about Quentin?
Hey everybody, my name is Quentin Solano. I am a fourth-year medical student at the University of Michigan, but I'm pursuing a dual degree right now, so I'll finish next year. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, grew up about 5 minutes south of there, went to the University of Michigan Dearborn campus, which is about 40 minutes east of Ann Arbor's main campus here that you see behind me, and took a gap year and fortunate enough to end here for medical school.
Okay, and now Chelsea.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chelsea. I am a current M2. I start the clinical clerkships on Monday in pediatrics. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. I went to Christian Brothers University there, which is a small little private university where I majored in biomed science. I took about 5 years off before coming to medical school, and here I am. And my clinical interests include cardiology, OBGYN, or possibly combining the two and doing cardio obstetrics.
Cool. And last but not least, Matt.
Hey everyone, I'm Matt. I'm a first-year medical student at the University of Michigan. I'm originally from Phoenix, did undergrad at Stanford, took 2 gap years, 1.5 gap years, found my way here. And I don't like to say that I don't know what I want to do yet. So I say that I'm interested in everything at this point.
Well, we like an open mind here at Michigan, so just keep that in mind when you're doing your apps. So what we're going to do today is we're going to break this up into kind of general topics, right? So some of these might be applicable to you, some of these might not. And so you can kind of choose which ones you really want to pay attention to. So we'll start out with application advice. And general question is, what do you think helped you stand out as an applicant? And if you were a first generation college student or a non-trad, how did you share your background and experiences as part of your application and interview process?
I can kick that off. So I grew up, my father is a auto worker, and most of my family are like cement masons, plumbers, and things like that. So I am a first generation college student as well as medical student. First, how did I talk about that? It kind of just got brought up, like you have a spot on your application where that ends up going in, and people, asked about my family and things like that. So I talked about it, was never shy about it. I was very proud of our blue collar upbringing and things like that. So I talked about it very highly. And I think there are a lot of things that you gain from that type of experience. So if you're in the same boat, reflect on it a little bit, think of what it means to you, and start to own it as part of your identity. I think it was something that I was worried about talking until my first interview. Then after that, I was pretty excited about it. One thing that stood out, do stuff you're interested in. I'll make this quick. I coached youth sports for 5 years, coached football. And that was one thing that was brought up in every single interview that I had. It was one of my most meaningful experiences. I loved it. It was the best thing I could have done, and it was completely non-medically related.
I can answer this as well. So I was also first gen. My father worked for an airline and my mother was a homemaker. Both of them didn't have higher than a high school degree. But I think the thing that made me stand out was I kind of used that, like my first gen background, as kind of like a catalyst. And I don't know if I would recommend kind of carrying that on your shoulders. It's just a lot of pressure knowing where I wanted to go and knowing where I had come from, but knowing that I wanted more. So I think what made me stand out was I had a ton of just clinical experience before coming in. I worked as a clinical research assistant for a couple years for endocrinology. For endocrinologist, I worked as a clinical research assistant in gynecologic oncology for a couple of years. Also did like little things like worked in derm path. I worked as a scribe. I had just a ton of clinical experience. And I think that admission saw that, and they just saw how passionate I was about being a physician. And in my mind, that was a way that I stood out, just letting them know that this is absolutely what I wanted to do. But I also echo what Quentin said in making sure that you are doing the things that you want to do. When you're thinking about your application, it goes over so much more, like, I guess, well, in a sense where when you're explaining your application, the things that you're passionate about, it'll come through versus you just padding your applications and having maybe a subpart explanation for just things that you think might look good on the application. So definitely do the things that you love, even if it's not related to medicine. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much. Definitely sounds like we're getting a lot of hints about showing your passion and being confident with who you are. And I definitely think that's something that you'll see in every medical student here. So another general question that we had specifically for MSTP was, how important is it that you had research done in the area that you want to get your PhD in? And I think this is maybe a two-pronged question. I think that if you are interested in primarily a STEM field, maybe you're interested in the biological sciences, I don't think that research area has to be the same. I did my first undergrad research experience in cell bio, and I'll probably end up doing it in either immunology or pathology. So I think the field doesn't necessarily matter as long as you show a really genuine interest in, what do you want to do with this PhD? Do you want to apply it just to do research, or are you trying to see how this can fit into the bigger scope of medicine and as a result, society? But I will say also, if you're someone who's going to make a very big change, maybe from, let's say you want to go from human physiology to anthropology, right? The non-trad applications is a little different, and it's a little bit more difficult because a lot of places don't offer non-trads. Like, I would probably say a lot of MSTPs don't offer non-trads, or at least a lot of MD PhD programs. And at Michigan, it's about 20% of the students. So, if you're going to make a huge jump, I think you're going to have to have a really good reason. But the most important thing is having a really strong interest and knowing what you want to do with it and having career goals down the road. So now we can move into interviewing. And how would you advise that someone prepares for interviews beyond the standard advice of being oneself?
So I can start off answering this one. I think it's really important to think about your most important experiences to you. So I would pick 3 or 4 things that really feel really meaningful for you. So for me, this meant I was an EMT for several years prior to coming to medical school. And so I made sure that I really had crafted my story around that and what was important for me to share. I also was a middle school teacher. And so I knew that I wanted to highlight those experiences in the interview. And so I really thought through those and what valuable lessons I learned from those and what I wanted to convey to an interviewer. I also think it's really important to practice with friends and family. I think in general, there's kind of standard interview questions that get asked in a lot of different interviews. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What's a challenge that you've overcome? And I think before you come to the interview, having a couple ideas of things that you want to talk about can alleviate a lot of the stress when you've prepared answers.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that, Kelsey. And I think one thing that helped me a lot to kind of contextualize and make those same points totally concrete was I actually bought a book, and I just looked this up on Amazon so I don't mess up the title, but it's called The Pre-Med Playbook, Guide to the Medical School Interview. And it's written by Dr. Ryan Gray. So for those of you that want a book suggestion, it's not long, but he was a medical school interviewer that kind of went through his own experiences, asking people, kind of traditional questions and like really hard questions. So like everything from, the intro, tell me about yourself, which is a really hard question to answer and do well, all the way up to, like what are some complex, problems in the healthcare system today, and how would you, address those? I never got asked those questions, but I was prepared to answer them in my interview day. And so that book helped me out a lot too.
I think I read that book too, Matt, before I interviewed.
Yeah, that's definitely one that I have heard of, but did not use myself. Well, thanks for the answers. And now we have a question about the preclinical year, and definitely one that you all hear quite often when you're interviewing. So how is the preclinical year structured? Is it really pass fail? I think we could have Matt start with this, and then the M2s could probably also give their opinions afterwards.
Yeah, so one thing that is unique, or I guess nearly unique about Michigan Medical School is that we only do one preclinical year. Hence why I'm, I guess, answering this question first, because I'm in it right now. So the short answer, yes, it is a true pass fail. I remember being kind of blown away like the first few weeks of school. We had a quiz like after the first week, and folks were, you know, like airdropping and sending in our class group chats like their big study guides that they put together and all that stuff. So yeah, the pass fail is a big deal, I think, to me. General structure to answer some of those for the preclinical year is, I think we have 6, right? Total of 6 blocks. And it's basic, like those are each like kind of mini terms. So you have kind of some midterms in there, and you have a final block exam at the end of each one of those blocks, which range anywhere from like 4 weeks to I think like 10 weeks is our longest one. Older folks, you have to correct me on that. But yeah, that's kind of overview of preclinical year.
Yeah, so I can jump in right now. So I'm an M2, so I just got out of my M1 year about, I think it's been roughly 9 weeks now, 9 or 10 weeks, starting M2 next week. But I think the thing that I loved about the preclinical year that I probably didn't think of in the very beginning was just it moves so quickly. And I think I was grateful for that, like on the back end. It is like a lot of information, but that's just like medical school, period. And that's what I would tell myself, like, either you're going to get it in 2 years or you're going to get it in 1. And so and by the end of my first year, I much like enjoyed, or I much rather would have preferred like the 1 year, because it just, every 2 weeks we have a quiz, and then you'll have, like Matt said, at the end of that particular block, you have a final, and you're pretty much done with that material, and you just kind of move on from block to block. But the pass fail in particular, it just gave, I'm a non-traditional student, so I took about 5 years off, and I worked like as a professional for those years. So for me, I guess the transition back into school was a lot better for me, or a lot smoother, because of the pass fail. It allowed me to kind of have just some wiggle room where it wasn't, I didn't feel the need to like get a 100 on every single thing. I could, do little things in the week, and have like, just kind of keep my well-being in check and do those things that I love doing, like yoga. Or I hear some students say or ask, like some of the M1s, the current M1s now ask, am I going to be able to like cook dinner? Am I going to be able to exercise? Like, am I going to be able to do all these things, or is it just going to be studying? But, and that's what the pass fail kind of gives you, that freedom to kind of do. I mean, you should be able to cook and exercise no matter what, but it gives you like the freedom to do those other things. Like maybe go out, on the weekend, or do something in the early, like in a Monday or a Tuesday, because Friday, and also to the flex time quizzing. That's a part of it as well, where between Friday and Sunday, you can take the quiz. So it's like the quiz opens up at like 3 p.m. on Friday, and it closes on Sunday at 10 p.m. So that too kind of allows you to create your schedule throughout the week. Like if you have some things happening during the week, maybe instead of taking it on Friday, you'll take it on Sunday. So yeah, it just provided a lot of flexibility as a whole. Like the entire curriculum is very flexible, which I loved.
Thank you both. Yeah, I can definitely resonate with that a lot. Pass fail is very good, and my only advice is don't study too much, because getting 100 isn't what's going to be important at the end of the day. Taking care of yourself is going to be very, very important in the long haul. And patients one day, they're going to be much, they're going to care much more about how well you can take care of yourself and be there for them, rather than whether you got 100 on that quiz. So now we just finished up with the preclinical, and we can move on with the clinical year. So the question is, what is the clinical year training like at Michigan? And how much autonomy do students have during rotations and sub-internships? And are away rotations also possible?
So I can start with the clinical year stuff, and Q can follow up with anything that I leave out. So the clinical year here is great. We do it our second year versus doing it, I think, your third year in a lot of more traditional curriculums. It is kind of a full calendar year, and you do a bunch of different rotations. I started out on some of the shorter ones like family med, psychiatry, and neurology, and then I ended with surgery. I honestly, you get to do so much as a Michigan medical student. I think just a little anecdotally, my husband went to medical school at a different school, and I think throughout my clinical year was constantly amazed by the amount of things that we were doing. And you have so much responsibility if you want it, and that our notes here count and residents use them and they matter, and you can answer pages, and you can, you go see your patients, and you really, really get to own them. And I have appreciated that so much, particularly moving, my M3 year doing, and my M4 year doing my sub-internships. I did a pediatric ICU sub-internship in February, and then in May I did my general floor peds sub-I. And I 100% felt like a resident. There were moments where I was like, oh, I don't know. You have so much freedom to really, I honestly told the residents a bunch that it's like kind of the best medicine to practice, because I get to do everything I can for my patients. I can put in their orders, I can write their notes. I am like the primary contact. The nurses are calling me, the consultants are calling me, I'm running everything. But at the end of the day, I have both residents, like an intern and a senior and an attending, that are all looking over my shoulder and making sure that, I'm not making any mistakes when it comes to taking care of this patient. So it's all just incredible learning without kind of any scary pressure that you're going to mess anything up. But I can wholeheartedly say that the Michigan process works, and you learn a lot. And I feel really, really ready for residency. And I feel really excited for residency. And I don't know if that would be the case if I went somewhere else, because it is different here, and we get to do a lot that isn't necessarily the case everywhere.
Can I just retweet that? That was great. That was awesome. I'll touch a little bit more on the sub-I experience. So I'm going into general surgery, and I did a transplant sub-I here, and I wasn't too sure what to expect. I know a lot of procedural specialties. It's kind of the connotation that medical students might not get to do a ton. But fortunately enough, I was allowed to do a lot, actually, and I was allowed to actually teach the medical students that I was on service with a lot of the floor procedures that we were doing, removing NG tubes, replacing wound vacs, placing sutures, in a patient that is awake on the floor after removing a drain, like those types of things. I was actually able to do, and once I proved that I could do them, I was allowed to teach the medical students that were on service with me to do those things. So not only are we getting the experience of being able to perform things, write notes, come up with differential diagnoses, and kind of fully manage our patients as best we can with a lot of the guidance that Kelsey had talked about, but we're also allowed to flex our teaching minds. And as residents later on, you'll realize as a medical student that it's really helpful to have a resident who is really interested in teaching. And I am one of those people who's very interested in it. So it's really nice to kind of work on that now, see what works and stuff like that, and see what I can carry forward or what would I change as I move forward into residency. And I echo Kelsey, I feel very prepared, coming out of Michigan medicine to go into residency and kind of hit the ground running. There are obviously plenty of things to continue learning, but I feel like I was well prepared for that. So.
This is like getting me excited for clinical years.
It's so fun.
They're the best years.
I'll let you know about that next year. So now we have a question about health equity, and I'll list off both questions now. In what ways are you involved with domestic or global health equity or community health programs? And question number 2 is, could you talk about how the curriculum addresses timely and important topics such as racism in medicine and LGBTQ+ care?
So I can answer about kind of health equity and global health and things. So I'm in the path of excellence called GHD, or Global Health and Disparities. I've been in it since I was an M1. I think for a lot of us in GHD, our experience has been a little bit different than people were initially anticipating, because historically, Michigan medicine has had a lot of really wonderful global connections and abilities to do rotations across the world and do both research and projects internationally. COVID obviously has thrown a wrench in that. And so GHD, I think internationally hasn't been as active for the past 2 years or so as it traditionally is. But I think domestically, there's still a bunch of things that have been done. I currently am doing a work on adolescent skin protection and building community initiatives and working with nonprofits in order to increase access to sunscreen. There's all sorts of organizations at University of Michigan that I've been involved with that I think do a really wonderful job of working with DEI initiatives. The first one that comes to mind is Doctors of Tomorrow, that I worked with as an M1 and was a capstone leader in, where we work with freshmen, but also some older students at Cass Tech in Detroit who are interested in medical careers, whether that's being a physician or a nurse or something else. We bring them on campus and we do workshops with them. And then we also do capstone projects. So as a capstone leader, and they actually do their own research project and then present it. And then I also taught a lot of workshops for college readiness and other things for them too. And then I've also been involved in My Health, which goes into Ypsilanti community schools and teaches health education classes to freshmen. If you can't tell, I really like teenagers. And so, I think there's a lot of different ways that you can get involved in a variety of communities, whether that's going to be in Detroit or Ypsilanti or our own Ann Arbor community. Michigan does a good job of, I think, doing some outreach.
Okay. Well, now, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I was just going to chime in about some curriculum stuff that I don't think is new at all this year, but I believe has been expanded upon some of our like anti-racism initiatives, particularly within our doctoring courses. I think we're in our I guess this is our 7th week of school. And I think we've had like 3-4 hour sessions so far related to, not like your traditional, check the box diversity talks, let's get it out of the way stuff, but really cool seminar style, big, large group meetings about topics that matter. And that's been something that a lot of the M1s this year have really, really appreciated, to see that thread kind of brought through so many weeks in our first 2 months of medical school.
Thanks. Now we have a live question, and it says, how has M-Home enhanced your life as a student and an individual?
I could talk a little bit about this. When I came in, I met my house director, Turan Elliott. One of the most fantastic human beings I've met here at Michigan Medicine. But when I met with him, he's my house counselor for Hamilton House, which up until this year was the 3-time reigning champion of the M-Home Olympics. We get a little competitive here about that, so I have to mention.
Clubhouse got robbed.
But I met with him. I think it was like my 4th or 5th week of medical school. And right away I felt very supported. He let me know of, a ton of resources and things like that, but really he cared about my story. He got to know me, asked me questions about myself, and I got to know him as well, which has been fantastic. And him and I will shoot each other emails now, either about sports or different motivational quotes and things like that. It's kind of just relationship that we have. And it's definitely enhanced my life. I feel extremely supported, but I think it's just enhanced the student body life as well. They're involved in a lot of the upper level administrative meetings, and they're there to advocate for the students at all times. And they can advocate for you in anonymous ways or in ways that, like, hey, if you needed to take a leave of absence for something, those are the people who will go to bat for you, and they'll go to bat time and time again for the student body. And I can, speak to that personally. And I'm just really thankful that we have that kind of support and structure interwoven in here. It's not just spoken, it's walked as well.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. M Home is a lot of spirit, and it's a lot about support and community. And I think that's really the point, is that, you can come from wherever you are, right? You could come from Stanford like Matt, and you could pop down here in Ann Arbor, and you can have your own little community, right? And I think that's really important. I'll even say also my house counselor as well. Christine, I've cried to her on multiple occasions, right? Like, I think that's just, I'll just admit that right now. If you're gonna end up in fits, you probably will cry to her too, and medical school is hard, life is hard. So definitely having a support group who cares about your emotions, cares about, how you're feeling, how much that, how happy you feel in school, definitely makes it all worth it. So now we can move on to the branches and the paths of excellence. So one of the questions is, I'm a bit confused about the path of excellence versus branches. Can you expound on the differences between the two, how you choose your path and or branch, and how they work together or don't?
I guess Q and I will be the ones to answer this one, since we're the senior med students. So I mentioned before that I'm in the Path of Excellence GHD. So paths of excellence, that's hard to say, are optional at University of Michigan. Most students choose to engage in one because it gives you a community of students that are interested in the same things that you are. It gives you access to mentors and research opportunities, and just an ability to like engage in further discussions about things and to grow. I'm not gonna be able to name them all off the top of my head, but outside of GHD, I know we've got one that's more like arts and literature. We have one that's like innovation and not like product design, but like innovative ideas. I don't know which one are you in?
I'm in a scholarship of learning and teaching.
Yeah, so there's a scholarship in learning and teaching one. There's several different ones. You can start being in those starting your M1 year, kind of towards the end of your M1 year. You figure out which one you want to be in if you choose to do one at all. I have several friends that are not in one and have totally enjoyed their med school experience. Once you enter the branches, which will be after you take like your step one, your board exams, and your clinical year is done, you will then enter a branch. It's all about trees up here, and there's a variety of different branches that you can join, but everybody joins a branch, and so you can have both a path of excellence and a branch, or you can just have a branch. I am in the patients and populations branch, which is really focused on kind of population health epidemiology and primary care in a lot of ways. And I chose this branch because I really think I want to do primary care pediatrics. And so I felt like I would learn a lot more from this branch. And each branch kind of has different requirements and different experiences that you can do. But one of the things that really, really drew me to patients and populations is the longitudinal clinic experience. And so I actually, for 12 months, at least 20 times over the course of 12 months, so I think it'll end up being a lot more, I work with a primary care pediatrician, and I'm in her office for a half day. And we've actually gotten because we work together so much. And so that's the sort of thing that the branches can provide, and that the branch you choose can sort of give you.
Kelsey, again, expertly covered everything. I echo everything that she had said. I'm in the Scholarship of Learning and Teaching branch. I joined it because I had mentioned earlier I'm interested in teaching and education, and it's something that I think critically about as often as I can. So I joined it for that reason, and it really paid off. I think I've met some great educators through that. You have path leads And they're typically faculty or administrators here at the University of Michigan, which is great. You're learning from some of the best in the field, experts who are sought after by other institutions, which is a lot of fun because you get to sit in a room with them and like hear their perspectives on things and realize that they're humans just like you, which is also nice to learn as a medical student. Because you look at some people sometimes on a pedestal and you're like, oh, how do I reach that level? And you realize we're all humans, and it's nice. It's a good interaction. And then your branches, I'm in the procedurals branch. I mentioned earlier I'm going into general surgery, so I chose that. And I haven't done a whole lot with it so far. We have some, different things you can volunteer to do. I think they've held a suturing clinic. They've held it was like a lines and airways clinic as well, where we just go into the simulation lab and do a couple fun things, learn how to put in chest tubes and stuff like that, and some of the mannequins that they have down there. And each branch, actually, when you're getting near the end of your 4th year, I think each branch now at this point has like a pre-residency boot camp. For the procedurals branch, I could speak to that specifically. It's a 8-week boot camp where they kind of, it's like a prep run for residency, and they do some simulated calls and things like that. You have your pager on you when you're at home, and they do some things. It's supposed to be a little intense, and it is. You learn stuff and you go over like common things you'll see as a proceduralist going through residency. So they do a pretty good job of that here. And there's some literature that it's actually come out of here and other institutions that is like very beneficial prior to starting residency, especially since, as you'll learn in 4th year, you apply and then you kind of relax a little bit. And I'm very much looking forward to that next year.
Okay, now we have a question about the curriculum. What is your favorite part of the U of M curriculum so far? And I think I'll start off with this. Definitely by far doctoring. So doctoring is a longitudinal course, and it's most active during M1 year, where you'll be going over a lot of, how do you take a history? How do you communicate better? How do you listen to patients, right? And how do you get patients to take, to take ownership of their health, right? And how to really prioritize their needs. So I think, it's longitudinal, and, it's in a group of roughly 11 to 12 students, and you'll be with them for your 4 years of medical school, or I guess for some people, maybe for half of it, if you're doing a PhD. But I think the point is that, you'll be with groups of people who, came from very different backgrounds, right? People who maybe can speak, much more eloquently than you, at least in my case, and a lot of people that you can learn from, right? And these are really bright minds who really want to do something new to this field of medicine, and make it a place that's going to be better for everyone. So I think that's, very motivational and also very inspiring, and also just, for my sake, one way to become better at communicating.
I think I can add to this. My favorite part of the U of M curriculum by far was the flexibility that was given to us, not just M1 year. We get a little bit less in clinical years. I'm sure you can figure out why. You're kind of beholden to the schedule that is given to you. But in the branches, when it comes to your final year and a half of medical school, you are allowed a lot of flexibility in choosing what you want to do, what electives you want to have. And at other medical schools that are in the traditional 2 and 2 curriculum, 2 years preclinical, 2 years clinical, they don't necessarily get that flexibility when it comes to selecting unique electives so that Michigan offers us. So you get a full year and a half to kind of plan out for yourself. So for me, even going into surgery, I was able to do 2 internal medicine rotations that I'm not going to ever do again as a surgery resident. So just kind of having that opportunity here to work with some teams that I might not be on again is just a blast. And M1 year, I'll speak to the flex quizzing was amazing. It opens up on Friday, done on Sunday. And, you could take it Friday night, have your weekend off, or have your weekend off and take it Sunday night and hope you pass. And that's kind of how I did it, kind of flying by the seat of my pants there. But it was a blast. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. I think the flexibility is key. Makes you feel like more of an adult, I think, when you're allowed to kind of build out your schedule how you'd like.
Okay, and now we have a question about the faculty, and it says, how engaged and supportive have you found the faculty at Michigan to be?
They've been great. I think that's part of the reason I really wanted to come to Michigan in the first place, is we have so many great faculty. And I found that people are way more interested in me than I ever thought they would be. And, you know, there hasn't really been anybody that I emailed and was like, hey, can we meet? And they were like, no. So I think sometimes it can be a little intimidating in like the M1, M2 sphere. And then once you get to the branches and you start kind of narrowing down what you want to do, there have been so many faculty that, you know, have offered to connect me with residency programs and have put me in contact with people they know, or have sat down to have coffee with me and talk about my career choices and what I want to do. You know, I can speak to, I had a meeting with Dr. Gorga a couple months ago that lasted like an hour and a half. We were just chatting about things. We have really, really wonderful faculty here. And I mean, goodness, I think, you know, as Quentin was saying before with house directors. So Dr. Wong was our house director, and we went over to his house and played board games and hung out one evening. Like, you just get to know people well, and Michigan does that well.
I can jump in. I'm so interested in a lot of things. And I think at the beginning of my M1 year, especially when we started organ systems, I think I had never in my life been interested in cardiology, but now it's something that it's like I'm really interested in, you know, doing a cardiology fellowship. And I would say it was due to me being able to reach out to faculty and talk to them about their experiences. And like Kelsey said, I haven't encountered one faculty member where I reached out and said, I really want to know more about what you do. I really want to know more about this, or for cardio obstetrics, for example, it's a very niche field, but we have a couple of faculty here who like run a cardio obstetrics clinic, and they've brought me in, and now I get to do research with them and I get to do all these things. And it's not like having to beg or like pull teeth, you know, because Michigan is a very, very great institution with brilliant faculty members and, you know, people who are kind of leading their fields. So to be able to work with these people, to be able to learn from their expertise and hear about their backgrounds and how they got to where they are in hopes of maybe me getting there one day, it's so inspiring. And, you know, yeah, it kind of gives you more fuel to kind of keep going when you have faculty who validate you constantly. And I think our faculty are amazing. So I could be biased, but.
Great. Now we have a question specifically for Quentin. How do you balance the curriculum in a dual degree program, and how do you plan on using your dual degree?
It's a great question. When I came in, I wasn't like super sold on doing a dual degree or anything like that. So I'll talk about like what made me choose it first. So coming in, I didn't have a strong research background. I went to U of M Dearborn. You can Google it. It's a small commuter campus. I was a 7-minute drive from my house, so I lived at home in undergrad. I was involved in a little bit of lab work, never published anything, never wrote anything, and wasn't really sure what that was going to look like for the rest of my career. When I came into Michigan, as many of you can figure out by just quickly Googling like Michigan, if you just type in like Michigan Health Services Research or something like that, you'll see hundreds of publications, tons of faculty that do research and stuff that isn't basic lab work. And I started to get really interested in that throughout my M1 and M2 year. And in those research meetings, I found that I didn't have the vocabulary or the understanding of research that I wanted in order to kind of keep up with the conversations and the research that was happening. So I thought, you know, hey, while I'm here, is there any way that I can get some extra training? And again, did a little Google search, and I found this program called the MSCR, which is a Master's in Clinical Research. I applied for it here. It's an NIH funded program, so it was really nice. I was able to get the year covered and things like that in terms of tuition and living. And that's ultimately why I ended up choosing it. Residency programs across the nation have kind of shifted, especially at academic centers, to allowing you to take 1 or 2 years to get a master's or do some research and things like that to kind of, you know, dive into what you're interested in. If you plan on remaining in academics, you can do that. So I was like, if I don't get it paid for, I can do it in residency, but I definitely wanted to do it because I saw myself moving more towards academic medicine, academic surgery specifically. And So with all those reasons, I applied, and speaking to the faculty support here, I had multiple mentors that were just super supportive, impactful in my decision to do this, and I spoke with them at length about this, I felt entirely supported, so I have no quarrels with or concerns about applying for it and doing it. And my primary research mentor this year, Dr. Tellum, has just been outstanding and supportive. There's residents in our group as well that I get to work with, so I'm getting multiple levels of mentorship throughout, and I think it just speaks to the Michigan environment here, the kind of support that you get, and I'm very thankful for it. How do I balance it? So it's an entire year dedicated to the master's as well as research. I'll be honest, I'm kind of like on an undergraduate schedule again. I have like one class on Tuesday, one class on Wednesday. So I can't lie, it's pretty nice. Like I saw Kelsey out this weekend. We were at a med school event for a football game, and it's great. I feel like I'm a little bit back in undergrad, but I'm actually doing some research that I'm really jazzed up about. So it's nice. I encourage you to think about it. There's also programs you can think of. The MSCR is one, but there's MPH, MBA. You can get a master's in education. There's plenty of stuff at larger academic programs like Michigan that they offer now.
Great. And now we have a question about well-being. And do you feel as students that you have enough emotional support and people to reach out to regarding both school and mental health? And this is certainly a very important topic, so I think it's probably important that all of us answer. And I'll just start since I'm already unmuted. Yes, I do. I've kind of already mentioned this, just with the amount of people, even faculty that I've, cried in front of or shared my emotions. People understand, this is no joke. Medical school is tough, and, it takes a lot out of you. And, if you're not in the right mindset, it can be incredibly difficult to go through. And even when you're in, a peak performance, it's still incredibly difficult to go through. So I think even with faculty, house counselors, really, they definitely are very supportive, but also your friends at school. I think realistically, I could reach out to anyone in my class and really just open up just like that. And there are definitely times where maybe you feel like that is more necessary than others, but long story short, definitely have a plethora of support, and ultimately why I feel very at home here. And Matt, maybe you could go next.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did a little bit of, not like anything clinical, excuse me, anything clinical or research oriented, but in undergrad, I did a lot of mental health work. And our favorite quote was, "Everyone has mental health." And it's so true that, you don't need to be in a crisis situation, to go seek help. And oftentimes people that do go seek, emotional support and have good experiences with it, it might have been a bad week, or it might have been a bad month, or you might have some at-home stressors or some relational stressors. So I think for me, the biggest thing is having that singular point of contact in our house counselors is just an incredible thing to have. Like, you don't need to be full crisis. Like, I needed to see a psychiatrist now to go get mental health. Like, I dial up Christine's, phone or Zoom or whatever, and like, boom, like I'm in a counseling session, as soon as she can schedule. So that just single point of contact for me, I think, is the coolest thing.
Yeah, sorry, I also wanted to point out, just because I forgot, but the med school mental health program is actually starting an opt-out system that offers therapy for every medical student at least twice a year. And this is a new program. And I think the fact that it's opt-out is definitely very good, because, we all know that it's very difficult to get help sometimes. It's difficult to admit. So by having an opt-out system, we're just assuming, this is something that we go through with everyone. We just want to make sure that you're doing okay. So maybe we could jump over to Chelsea next for this.
Sure. So mental health was something that I was already invested in, like prior to starting medical school. I had been in therapy for a few years. So coming into medical school, knew it would be stressful just based off the experiences of students that I had gotten to know prior to starting, knew that it would just be, there would be a transition period. There would be like acclimating and, kind of this lifestyle that a medical student lives sometimes doesn't promote the healthiest practices. So even before starting, I found a therapist here in Ann Arbor, and I think I'm a little bit ashamed to say I don't use our house counselors as much as a lot of students do. I typically just go to therapy every couple of weeks with a therapist that's local here to Ann Arbor and kind of talk about, you know, things that are going on in my life, or if, you know, school's a bit stressful, or my personal life, if things are going on there. But I definitely advocate for talking to somebody, whether it be the house counselors, making an appointment to a psychologist or a therapist, talking to your classmates. They know exactly what you're going through, especially the people who are in your class, but also classes who are, you know, above you. They've been where you are, so they can kind of give you advice on just balance. Balance is very important. It can just be all about school all the time. And I know as medical students, it's, you know, that might be kind of, I don't know, kind of off-putting, where this is what we're doing, you know, this academic setting. But I think one thing that Michigan does promote, and promote very well, is just the whole person. You know, being a physician is something, it'll be a part of like who we are, but it's not entirely who we are. It's just it's a part of our story. And I think that you have to cultivate the other parts of yourself as well to keep your cup full. So it's important to just find those things that you love doing. And I think Michigan helps us find that, and they encourage us to do that. They encourage us to continue to do those things that we love doing prior to starting medical school. So yeah, I think that our program definitely promotes our well-being, and they want what's best for us. They want us to be great students, but they also want us to be just amazing people, well-rounded people.
So just taking a look at the time, we might have to go through it a little bit quicker. But if Kelsey and Q, if you want to just say something real quick about that.
Oh, yeah, so I can speak quickly about this, and that this is actually one of my favorite things about University of Michigan Medical School. So I don't have like a long-standing mental health history, but in December, during my step 1 study period, my step 1 exam was unexpectedly canceled, and I had, to be fully transparent, like a total mental health crisis because of that. And the first person I emailed was actually my house counselor, Eric Middleton, and he emailed me back probably about an hour later. This was a Tuesday, I had a psychiatry appointment that Friday. I was in Atlanta, so I flew back to Michigan Thursday, had a psychiatry appointment on Friday, had a therapist appointment that next week, and was totally plugged in with mental health services and have been ever since. And just to speak to the incredibleness of that, I just did my adolescent psychiatry rotation, and it's the waitlist for a psychiatrist in the community is about 9 months at this point. And the only reason that I didn't have a psychiatry appointment that Tuesday instead of, and I had to wait until Friday is because I physically wasn't in the state of Michigan. Otherwise, I would have had a psychiatric appointment the same day. And University of Michigan Medical School is not talk when they talk about their support for mental health services, but they walk the walk. And if you need mental health support and you reach out to the medical school, they will wrap their arms around you and give you immediately what you need to be successful. And that has been so absolutely true for me. And I'm incredibly passionate about the supports that we have here.
I know you'd asked me to say something, but I think it was very well covered in terms of the resources and stuff that we have here. I will say just one quick anecdote. I don't have a long-standing mental health history. I did see, a therapist some time ago in undergrad for a few things and stuff, but a lot of what I've done throughout medical school to kind of keep my mental health going is, one, focusing on how am I feeling? Am I taking care of myself? Am I doing things that I really enjoy? And then 2, I actually started a journaling practice for myself to kind of write down things and think through stuff that is bothering me. And, oftentimes stuff that bothers us, we try to just shake it off, maybe take a nap and forget about it. But ultimately it kind of comes back around and affects you again. And what I found with the journaling is it's just helpful for me to get my thoughts on paper and then actually start thinking about it, because it's hard to put a name to something unless you define it and define how you're feeling and define what that feeling is. And if it's bothering you throughout the day and you go home and you actually sit down and put those words on paper, it's good because those words, and once you define it, it gives you something to think about or attack or put into action, something like that. And when I say attack, I mean attacking the issue that's bothering you, not the person, hopefully. Yeah, you need to define those things for yourself, and that's part of therapy. It's something I learned a while ago. I just never really employed it, and now I have, and throughout this research year that I've been in now for 3 months, it's been really beneficial.
Well, now we'll move on to extracurriculars. And the question is what are some of the specific extracurriculars, such as student orgs, research, community service, that each of you participate in, and how has your participation impacted your experience as a medical student? And also, along with that, how do you personally find balance? And I think probably the most closest to residency is Kelsey, so maybe you could answer that.
Yeah, sure. So some student organizations that I'm in, I am a tag day czar for the organization Galen's. And our big fundraiser every year is tag days. If you come to University of Michigan, which you all should, you'll learn lots about Galen's. We put on the Smoker every year, which is our giant med student musical. That's a roast of our faculty. So that's a great way to get to know faculty. But then also we do this fundraiser for children's charities in Washtenaw County. So last year we raised like $80-something thousand. So, we're working on it this year. Other than that, like I said before, I've done Doctors of Tomorrow, I've done My Health. I do a bunch of research through a Michigan platform through the Family Med Department called My Voice that I'm really passionate about. And that's really the bulk of it. I think I intentionally, when I came to medical school, undergrad, I did a lot. And I think I had a lot of breadth and some depth. But once I got to med school, I really wanted to make sure that I was being intentional about the things that I joined and that I was only joining things that brought me joy. And that's kind of my life motto, and how I find balance is if it doesn't bring me joy, I don't do it. Now, luckily, medicine brings me a lot of joy. And so I've chosen a career that I really love and that I love doing. But as far as extracurriculars are concerned, I wanted to make sure that I was doing things that I felt really strongly about. And so the days of like volunteering because you have to volunteer, or doing research projects because you have to do research projects, or like checking off boxes, like that's over. It's all about depth, not breadth. So I think just in summation, like balance for me is really just doing things I love. I love throwing parties. Like throwing parties is my favorite thing in the world. Like a themed dinner party, nothing makes me happier. I put it on my residency application because it's like how I spend all of my free time. And I think doing those things in medical school, I have a husband that I love and adore, and I spend tons of time with him. Community is absolutely the most important thing to me. And so hanging out with my friends, and that's my balance.
That was definitely really well put. So here's just about a question about life in Ann Arbor. What has been surprising to you about living in Ann Arbor? I think we could probably ask Matt, given he just moved from Stanford not long ago.
Yeah. I'm like a West Coast dude. I love Arizona. So I was a little hesitant to come out to the Midwest. I have to say, so I like that river that's right behind me too. Like I fish there all the time and I love that. But the most surprising thing has been actually the food. The food here is so good. Shout out Monahan's Seafood Market. Undoubtedly, undoubtedly like the best fish sandwich I've ever had. Like cooked to order fish, fillets, like fresh out of the case. It's been awesome. Huge surprise. Absolutely the most underrated part of all of Ann Arbor.
And they also have a very good lunch deal, which is actually pretty cheap as well. Maybe Quentin, did you have anything to add about what's been surprising to you about living in Ann Arbor?
Not too much. I'm from the Detroit area, so for me, I knew Ann Arbor a little well. I think one of the more interesting things about Ann Arbor that I learned was the food scene here. I didn't really know too much about it before moving out, and Matt touched on it already a little bit. So for me, that was really nice. There's a good mix of ethnic food here, which is fantastic. I had never had Indian food before moving to Ann Arbor, and I have fallen in love with Indian food, which is great. So those kinds of things, and how small and like close knit of a community it can actually feel like when you meet friends and people here and stuff like that. You kind of see the same people out, which is nice.
Hey, and how about you, Chelsea?
I think the thing, I'm more of a city girl, a big city girl. So yeah, I'm just counting my days to move to Los Angeles. But I don't know. I think the thing that I love most about Ann Arbor is the fact that it is like, even though University of Michigan is so big, it's still like it's a small town. So I think it has that kind of feel to it, very homey, very loving. The people are incredibly nice and warm and just inviting. And I think that's the one thing that I love the most. I'm from the South, so I'm used to kind of Southern hospitality. But I always say we do that out of obligation. It's just, you've come into the South, we're supposed to take care of you. But I feel like in Ann Arbor, they do it because they actually want to do it. Yeah, and that's very, very inviting. And I just feel like, it's always just a big hug whenever I'm here. So I think that's been the thing that I love the most about Ann Arbor.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. People actually caring about you because they want to rather than have to. That's always nice. Well, we're coming up relatively close to the end. Did anyone of you have anything that you wanted to add before we start with our last question? Okay. Well,
I think I just wanted to add back on the mental health thing that we talked a lot about counselors, but I think like currently, like as in like right now, we're in the process of hiring like a licensed psychologist just for medical students too, which I think is worth noting.
yes. Okay. Well, if not, we'll move on to our final question, and hopefully we can get an answer from everyone. And this is basically, why Michigan? Why did you choose to come to the University of Michigan? And what about the University of Michigan Medical School community particularly makes you proud of that? So maybe we could just start with any order, but maybe we can start from the youngest first. So Matt?
Oh, I'm feeling special. So I'm a big culture guy. I was a student athlete in undergrad too. And I mean, even now, like goodness sakes, I mean, I have like if Michigan made underwear, like I would wear it. I love the school culture, but more importantly, Michigan has been doing this a long time. They've been in medical school for 170 years. They figured some things out, and they know the working formula. And for me, the kicker was, Dean Gay got on my interview day and said, here at Michigan, we're gonna go far because we're gonna go together. I felt that at every point in my interview cycle. And that was the culmination of it. And I was like, all right, dude, sign me up. Like, I'm going to go far with you guys. I love the culture. I'm bought into that. Give me some Michigan underwear. I will wear it. And yeah, so I was a big culture guy.
How about you, Chelsea?
I would say hands down, it was the people. Of course, Michigan is an excellent institution. I knew that I was going to get a really great medical education. But honestly, you can get that at a lot of places. So it wasn't kind of the determining factor. It was just the people. I remember my interview day and we heard from Dean Gay. It was like he was speaking directly to me. And I was like, oh, I'm supposed to be here. Like, this is where I'm supposed to be. It was like hearing Carol Teener, having interactions with her. Having interactions with the admissions office, just even through email, like who emails back in like 5 minutes? Like who does that? Even with my experiences with financial aid, it's just been incredibly pleasant. Even to this day, even now, it wasn't in my mind. I'm like, is this like a thing that they do like in the beginning where they kind of like reel you in and then they just switch up on you? But even as an M2, and I'm pretty sure M4s have the same experience, it's like no change up. It's just the same. So the people, like really beautiful people who care about their students. So I don't feel like a number. I just feel like a student and that they care about me as a person.
Yeah, I guess I'll go next. I definitely feel that 100% the people. And I also just say with the students first, like I feel very at home, right? I feel like I'm with people who have very similar goals as me, people who, want to do a lot in this world. And I think one of the things that really stood out to me was, what kind of populations that people really cared about here. And, it's not just for themselves, it's for populations that don't really have a voice, right? People who really need someone to be an advocate, right? People who really need, a public health leader, people who really need someone, to, maybe go to Congress and fight for them, whether that be legally or, through any other issues. So I think, that definitely stood out to me, just how driven my classmates were, not only for their own career, but how their career was going to influence the society as a whole. So maybe we can move on with Quentin.
I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but 100% hands down, the environment and the people. I think Matt hit it really good. I'm same kind of person. I'm a culture guy. I grew up in a kind of a small neighborhood, coach football, things like that. And I really knew my neighbors well. And when I heard Dean Gay talk here, I really felt like they fostered a community and they brought in people who wanted to also foster community. And I felt that at Second Look. I felt that throughout the interview process. I felt it when I was talking to Carol Teener before deciding to commit here. And I think I committed the next day after a phone call with her. And it is just hands down one of the best places that you can train because of the people that they recruit, the residents they recruit, the faculty they recruit. It is all about community, the team environment, and it's hands down just the best place in the world. I wouldn't want to train anywhere else with the classmates that I have, Kelsey being one of them. People like her, they recruit people like that here, and you get to work with them and they get to be your colleagues. And that just, it's amazing. And it speaks volumes to what this place means to me and what the people mean to me. And those are the kind of people I want to train with because I think Chelsea said it really well. You're going to get good education anywhere, but who do you want to be with for those 4 or 5 years that you're here? And, Kelsey, Matt, Chelsea, those are the kind of people I want to be with. So.
Love you, Q. That was so nice. You're great.
Love you too, Kelsey.
Okay, I guess I'm last. So to round it out and to build off of what Q said, my interview experience is a little bit different than all of y'all that are watching this in that my interview was in person. But I remember going, kind of walking in early in the morning. It was like 7 a.m. It was still dark outside. And I met this girl named Victoria, who is still in our class. Obviously, she ended up coming here. But and I immediately clicked with her, and we started talking, and we were laughing about stuff, and we were sitting around this conference table, and pretty much everybody at this conference table was laughing and chatting with each other and having a great time and talking. So much so that Carol walked in and was like, "Oh, it's time to go interview," and we had all kind of forgotten because we were enjoying each other so much. And when I was deciding where I wanted to go to medical school, I wanted to go to the medical school where I knew my best friends were. And not only did I enjoy the faculty, not only did I enjoy everything that Michigan had to offer, but it was the place where I knew my best friends were, because I loved the people on my interview day. And that has held true every single day that I have been here. I have met some of the greatest people I will ever know. I have not only gone to medical school and will soon be graduating medical school, but I can truly say I have loved medical school. Medical school has been fun. It's been 4 of the most fun years I've had. And I enjoyed undergrad. I wasn't miserable then, but I really loved medical school. And that's what I wanted. I wanted a place that was fun. And Michigan allows you, if you, if you're looking for that, to have a lot of fun and to really enjoy it. And I have friends that I know will be my friends for the rest of my life that I met here, that we already have our yearly vacation planned where we're going to go Key West every year, and it's going to be so much fun. So for everybody watching, your people are here and you can find them and you can love it. So.
Well, I think that was really well said by everyone. Well, looks like, we've come to our time today. To the students, Matt, Chelsea, Quentin, and Kelsey, thanks so much for taking the time out of your schedule to be open, and be vulnerable in front of all of us, sharing stories that maybe aren't so easy to share. And To the users out there watching, thanks for submitting some great questions and taking the time to join us tonight and hear a little bit about our school. One Twitter user did tell us that, Matt, they do have underwear at I'm Done apparently. So yeah, and for all of you who are applying, good luck with the application process. Anyone else who's thinking about applying, apply. Like this is a great career, and it's a very meaningful one. And no matter what your high school teacher told you, like if you want to put yourself to this, you can do this. So everyone else, good luck with the application process and go blue.